Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of our entitled people. In today's episode, my brother still expects me to make his lunch. Entitled person destroyed my shelter, I'm homeless, with me inside. Entitled neighbor thinks he can wander into my back garden when he wants. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. My brother still expects me to make his lunch. My little brother, M14, and still expects me, F15, to make his lunch. Our parents taught us how to cook things at 12, but my brother refused to learn. His cooking skills are so bad he didn't know what to do after the water started boiling when he tried to make spaghetti, and my mom had to tell him he had to put the spaghetti in the water. Today I was making myself some chicken tenders. He doesn't know how to work the oven, and he asked me to make him mozzarella sticks in the oven. I told him that I can't just make them on the same tray because the tenders need to cook longer ext. I also told him that this could be a good learning experience to use the oven if he let me teach him how to use the oven after I was done with it. He said no, and also said that I was being selfish and hoarding food because I wasn't cooking for him when he's 14. But I explained to him why I couldn't cook the mozzarella sticks and the tenders at the same time, and I said I could teach him how to cook for himself. He said he just wouldn't cook anything at all and said, and I quote, "You're the reason I'm starving," and then 30 minutes later I saw him making ramen in the microwave, the only cooking utensil he knows how to use. Weaponized incompetence. What's that? I raised 3 sons and they all know how to cook and clean. I hope your parents support you passing this responsibility to your brother. Ignore what he says. He's trying to manipulate you into waiting on him, and it may get worse before it gets better. Set a boundary and repeat it whenever he pushes you. Something like, "I will tell you how to cook for yourself, but I will not do it for you. You are capable of cooking for yourself," etc. My son is an amazing cook. I'll never forget the year he made me lemon blueberry ricotta pancakes for Mother's Day and followed that up with stuffed chicken marsala for dinner. All made from scratch. He knows, trust me, he knows how, he just doesn't want to. So, the answer is, don't make food for him. If he gets hungry enough, he will figure it out. If he makes a mess, don't clean it, let your parents deal with his nonsense. You are not his parent. Another moron man in the making. You tried. Entitled person destroyed my shelter, I'm homeless, with me inside. So, I'm homeless, doing my best to get out of this situation. I live in the woods and have a makeshift shelter I've been living in throughout the winter, just doing my best to survive and not freeze to death. I don't drink or do drugs, so I guess I have the advantage there. But no matter what, there is always someone out there who wants to cause you problems. Today, I heard some rustling outside my shelter, and the tarp I use for covering was getting moved around. So, I shouted, "Who's there? What do you want?" I was met with a, "Why are you here?" I said, "Because I have nowhere else to go." I heard more rustling, then they pulled the wood I used to keep the upper tarp over my shelter. There had to be 2 of them because they pulled the wood out, collapsing my shelter with me in it. They yelled at me as they walked away, saying, "That will teach a bum like you. Don't be around here." People can really suck. So, there I am, trapped in my shelter. It's a tent covered in a winter tarp with a teepee structure over it and a tarp over that. When it came down, I was inside, I was trapped. It took me an hour to move around everything to get out. Now here I am, rebuilding my shelter to stay out of the snow because of a couple of entitled assholes who just wanted to do harm. I'm thinking of you, friend. It really sucks that the position you're in has been made even more shitty. People really do suck, and every day proves it a little more. But you got this, and I believe that you'll find your level ground in life again. I'm so sorry. I found myself wondering yesterday how you were doing. I have been reading your posts. I hope you are out of this part of your life and on to better things soon. Well, now I'm just trying to figure it out, doing what I can where I can. I want to save some money up and get myself a small homestead up north. It sounds like you are someone that does their best to keep a clean space and is just trying to exist safely and did nothing to deserve to have someone trap you in your shelter. If they are so pissed at the homeless situation, they need to help. Some people don't want help, but many do. Making a larger mess because you are pissed off is not okay. Which is what they did, and tried to harm you intentionally, and that is not okay. Entitled neighbor thinks he can wander into my back garden when he wants. Going to try and set the scene a bit here. My house backs onto a number of flats. I have a little terrace/garden out the back that is linked to my property. Below the terrace is a small patio area that is linked to the flats, which they can get access to by their own back door. There are then steps up to my area, which are gated off. I also have a locked gate that allows access to the terrace/garden because I live on a main road. A few months ago, the flat behind me had a problem with their plumbing, and the drain behind was overflowing with literal shit. Obviously, an extremely nasty situation for everybody. When the owner of the flats, we will call him T, asked if he could come round the back and check the drain, of course we said yes because we're not total assholes. After he checked the drain, he said he'd need somebody to come out, check it and drain it. We agreed but made it clear we would need to be made aware before it happened as stipulated in our rental agreement with the letting agent. He said fine, and we got notice before any work was done so we could ensure our gate was unlocked. I thought that was the end of it, and boy was I wrong. A few weeks later, I was at home and heard my front gate open. I found it odd because my boyfriend wasn't due home from work for a little while and nobody knocked on the door. The door to my house is immediately next to the gate, so it's seconds between the gate opening and a knock. When the gate went a second time, I looked outside to find T walking away. Obviously, he had entered my property without my consent. Wanting to give him the benefit of the doubt, believing that he just wanted to check the drain one last time, I didn't say anything about it. Just letting it slide. A couple of days later, my boyfriend, who had given him his number to deal with the drain issue, got a phone call from him, saying he needed to gain access to the back of our property and why did we have our gate locked. As my boyfriend said, we were both at work and neither could come home to deal with his request, and if he needed something to speak to the letting agents. He just hung up. I spoke to my boyfriend and we collectively came to the decision that we would keep the gate locked at all times, even when we were in, because I didn't feel comfortable him just walking into my property as and when he felt like it. And he did not like that. The next time he tried to get in, my boyfriend was at home, and I was at work. When he opened the gate, he got a stream of abuse from T, asking why we had locked the gate when he had permission to have access to the back when he wants, and there is a note in our rental agreement to state this. He threatened to get solicitors on us if we didn't leave the gate open, or give him a key to get in when he wanted. It was here, he said, because he had renovated the house he deserved to gain access on his terms, even though he wasn't our landlord. My boyfriend just told him to take it up with the letting agent if there was a problem and shut the door on his face. When I got home, I combed through my rental agreement and there was no such note in place. The only thing I could find about access was we require 24 hours notice for any work or access to the property, including the garden, unless it was urgent and they required access sooner. But they still had to provide detail in writing about any work that would be done even within 24 hours. Because of this, I told the letting agent, who had communication with T, that he would have to ask for access to my garden via them and I require the written notice as stipulated in my contract. They agreed to pass the message on. Things cooled a bit, but the problem with the drain started again. We could see it was overflowing and apparently T was aware. But we hadn't heard anything from him or the letting agent about when somebody would come and deal with it. This was when I got my own back. I'm probably a bad person for this, but at this stage I had enough. T turned up with the drainage company on a day that I was at home unwell. I was lying on the sofa when I heard a van pull up and somebody try to open the gate. But of course it was locked. The bell went and I considered getting up and answering the door, but when I heard T's voice I decided I wasn't going to feed his entitlement. I just lay back down, stuck my earplugs in and tried to go back to sleep. For the next 30 or so minutes he tried to get in. Constantly ringing the bell, knocking loudly on my window, shouting into the house, screaming at what I can only assume was my boyfriend on the phone. But I ignored it all. Eventually he got the message and left. When my boyfriend came home from work he came back to give us a verbal dressing down, threatening legal action again etc. because he needed access to the property and we didn't provide it. I pointed out that neither of us were in when he turned up, my blinds were shut and nobody can see in, so he didn't know I was off sick, and he didn't give us the agreed notice that he would require access and in the future I will no longer be dealing with him. If he wants access to go through the letting agent, and the next time I find him in my garden I'm ringing the police for trespassing. He was still threatening me so I told him to go for it because I get free legal advice due to a membership I had and if he really wants to go down that route be my guest. I've honestly never seen somebody shut up so quickly. He said he'd go through the letting agent in the future and I said good choice and shut the door in his face. After that he solely dealt with the letting agent and followed all instructions once he knew I had access to free legal advice. The best part about this whole incident was, he could have checked the drain from his own property and never needed access to my garden. He just wanted to flex his muscles and thought he could bully us because we're a young couple. I just don't understand the thought process of cretins like this. Like what in the hell was the motivation here? Is he a voyeur? Is he just a bored landlord that has nothing better to do? I think it was the latter. He just had nothing better to do and believed that because he renovated this property he could just walk into the gate when he wanted. I mean, I wouldn't even allow that with my own landlord. I certainly wasn't going to let him think he could do it. I gave him way too much leeway at the start tbh. Heck, I had my landlord, private rental, knock on the door to ask if he could have access to the backyard to check something on his shed. I rent the house, yard and garage, but there is a large shed attached to the garage that is excluded in the lease full of my landlord's items. Shed is accessible without setting foot on the land I rent. Gave him the go-ahead with no problem. A few weeks later he contacts me again and asks if I'm alright with him accessing his shed from the backyard with limited notice because he was trying to have work done to it, but the work wasn't going to be easily scheduled ahead, friend of his doing him a favor during slow periods. I ask what exactly he needs access to. He takes me around his shed pointing out what he is getting done and apologetically saying which parts will need access through my areas to get done. I tell him he can have access whenever since my work schedule is all over the place and I may be sleeping when he needs access, but if I see them working I'll make sure to stay out of their way. I also mention moving some things to make it easier for them to access the area they need. If he had just randomly turned up and started working on his shed parked in the backyard and tearing up the grass I may have been pissed. Good for you. You should also let the office know he can access from his own property and tell them they should deny access. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share and we will see you in the next video.